Art is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. Art History Timeline. How did it all start? Art began over 27,000 years ago. As humans became smarter, their imagination and ability to create art increased. Prehistoric art. Europe in 30,000 BC to 2500 BC. People live in caves and survive by hunting and gathering that gradually evolved into learning how to use tools to make things. No organized government or religion, so art is made for practical purposes to help with hunt or please natural forces. Art is made from natural resources like crushed berries and rock and sticks for brushes. Egyptian 3100 BC to 30 BC. First civilization to develop literature, science, mathematics, and large-scale, unified and organized government. Led by a pharaoh whom all artwork was created for and about. Egyptians were religious, believing in many gods, the afterlife, and specific practices preparing and caring for the dead. Sculpture and paintings are more realistic than prehistoric art, but remain simplistic and distorted, using odd figural juxtapositions. Massive architectural monuments were built in the form of pyramids to serve as a tomb for the pharaoh. Greek, 850 BC to 31 BC. First glimpse at higher realism in art. Perfection in art is more important than portraying reality. Symmetry in sculptural work is crucial to the Greeks. Temples are created to pay tribute to gods and goddesses. Ceilingless architecture is more about the attributed god or goddess rather than cover from the elements. Clay vessels are created for function, storytelling, and aesthetics. Very few Greek artworks remain due to the Romans wiping out much of the Greek culture. Roman, 500 BC to 476 AC. Heavily influenced by the Greek era. Roman art is more functional than religious and celebrates the empire and emperor. The Romans developed many advanced architectural features such as the aqueduct, vaulted ceilings, and domes made possible by their development of concrete. Realism is more important than perfection. Figures are sculpted and painted to look as they do in reality. Paintings and other artworks are no longer intact or even remain due to the fall of Rome. Pre-Columbian, 30,000 BC to 1600 CE. Africa, North America, South and Central America were inhabited with natives pre-European conquest. Native American populations in all three Americas dwindled and were extinguished due to European disease, massacres, and territorial wars in which the Europeans succeeded in expanding its civilization into the current Americas. The Africas separated into countries and was able to maintain many tribal communities while other parts were colonized by the Europeans, much like in the Americas. Medieval, 500 to 14,000. Considered the Dark Ages. Most common people were illiterate, so artwork took the place of words in books and windows of cathedrals. Very futile time. Most artwork didn't survive, and those that did were religious in nature, preserved by the church. Figures in painting and sculpture begin to approach realism with slightly distorted proportions and lack of value. Renaissance, 14,000 to 15,000. A rebirth of art after the dark and depressing Dark Ages. Art is primarily religious in nature that starts off flat, unrealistic, disproportionate figures to later evolve into highly realistic proportion figures. Tempera is used initially in painting until oil paint is developed, later heightening the realism and color quality that artists can generate. Birth of the triangle composition, perspective, and self-portraiture. Baroque, 16,000 to 1750, mainly in Europe. Oil paint is used to create dramatic imagery using high contrast in lights and darks called the chiaroscuro. Eventually moves into a very frilly and ornate style called Rococo. Subject matter is generally of a religious nature or portraits of the wealthy. Impressionism, 1865 to 1885, started in France. Light and visual sensation are more important than realism. Thick, loose brush strokes are used to capture the life and light of a scene, situation, or object. Post-Impressionism, 1885 to 1910, started in France. Uses thick, textural applications of paint. Color choices are brighter and bolder than that of Impressionism. The simplification and exaggeration of color and shape begin here, creating a path for Expressionism to take place next. Expressionism, 19,000 to 1935, started in Germany and moved into France. Conveys feeling and emotion rather than direct representations of reality. Use violent and harsh elements like line, shape, and color to convey mood. This way of using the elements and principles was a reaction against traditional art methods and became a vehicle for social truth and bitterness after World War I. Cubism, 1905 to 1920, started in France, influenced by tribal art of Africa. There are two types of cubism. First is analytic cubism, showing a subject by spreading out pieces across the canvas. The second one is synthetic cubism, showing a subject's different sides or angles from different viewpoints or distance. Cubism uses simplified shapes, colors, patterns, and lines to show the figure and everyday scenes and objects. Surrealism, 1917 to 1950, started in France and spread across the globe. Expresses the imagination and dreamlike states using realistic and unrealistic art techniques. Art that is free-form conscious control or hallucinatory scenes that defy common sense are more important than depicting reality accurately. Abstract Expressionism, 1940s to 1950s, started in the US, New York, East Hampton. Relied on instinct, action, and art materials. The technique in using art materials is more important than the concept. Pop art, 1960s, started in England and US, a reaction to mass media, TV, radio, magazines, and pop culture in general. Use a lot of symbolism, simplistic compositions, repurposing of materials. The social message was more important than the art process. Studying the art of the past teaches us how people have seen themselves and their world, and how they want to show this to others. Art history provides a means by which we can understand our human past and its relationship to our present, because the act of making art is one of humanity's most ubiquitous activities. We also can compare artwork. which provides different perspectives and gives us a well-rounded way of looking at events, situations, and people. By analyzing artworks from the past and looking at their details, we can rewind time and experience what a time period different from our own was like. To sum it up, looking at art from the past contributes to who we are as people. By looking at what has been done before, we gather knowledge and inspiration that contribute to how we speak, feel, and view the world around us.